Good afternoon. Those of you who don't know me, my name is Kent Mathews, and I am retired almost a year. It'll be a year in August. Decided to leave the workforce and take a breather, but I still do presentations about caregiving and caregivers, and am involved on a couple of boards and whatnot. A little bit of background for those of you who have not heard me before. One is I have a tendency to talk to myself, meaning when I'm giving a presentation, I'm also reminding myself in my own personal life that I need to be following and doing certain things. And then the other, just a minute. Sorry about that. The other part about me is I had two different careers in my work time. The first career, I worked in the Lutheran Church as a director of Christian education, which meant I was responsible for the youth ministry and the education in a particular church from cradle to grave. And then after that, I did that for 15 years. And then I left that, went back to school, got my master's degree, and was a hospice social worker for 15 years. Pretty much all of that time was in Arizona. Finished my hospice career here in Colorado Springs, and that's when I went over to the Area Agency on Aging, and I did their Family Caregiver Support Center, which basically meant my responsibility was to help family caregivers get connected to resources in the community, get connected to different respite opportunities, and then also do a lot of education in the community about caregivers and why it is so, pardon my French, damn difficult. Because what I've learned while I was doing that, we think it's going to be easy to take care of a husband or a wife. We think it's going to be easy to take care of mom and dad. And then when we get started with that, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of issues. And we're going to touch on some of those today in this presentation, which is, I'm fine, I don't need your help. And I'm sure if you've taken care of a family member or whatnot, you've heard that come out of your loved one's mouth. I'm okay. I don't need the help. I'm doing fine. So, just a couple of quotes. The first one is from Teddy Roosevelt. This country will not be a good place for any of us to live in unless we make it a good place for all of us to live in. And then the second one is Casper ter Kuile. A community can flourish only when each individual member flourishes. Nobody is forced to surrender their identity or level of skill or confidence. Keep that one in mind. And then the last one from Helen Keller. Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. So, what are the challenges? These next couple of slides are going to be talking about some of the basic challenges that family caregivers face in caring for a loved one. One is today's family caregivers need a community of support, which is what this whole theme is about, even though the family member says, I don't need your help. To do it well, you need a community of support. So the reason it's important to have that community support is the average length of time as a caregiver is 4.5 years. If you're caring for somebody with dementia of any type, whether it's Alzheimer's, Lewy body, frontal temporal lobe, pick the dementia, it's about 10 plus years of caregiving. So it's a long time commitment. And the other part of that long time commitment, which makes it difficult, other than when you're caring for a family member and they broke an arm or leg or whatnot, in this commitment, their physical ability to do things continues to decline. And they wind up doing less and less and less and less. And the caregivers having to do more and more and more and more. In fact, caregivers are required to do more medical care. 6 in 10 caregivers perform such, 6 out of 10 caregivers, when asked, say they're doing medical care that skilled professionals like nurses or PTs or OTs could be doing, but they're doing it. The thing that I've learned in my own medical history over the last couple of years, but I was seeing this in the community as well. In our medical model, we are becoming more and more outpatient. So years ago, things that were done, like when my mom was in her 40s or 50s or whatnot, and there was something medical that had to be done, she stayed in the hospital until she was well enough to go home. We don't do that nowadays. My wife just had total knee replacement on her right knee. She stayed overnight in the hospital, and next afternoon, she was sent home. Okay? With instructions on, here are your pain meds and all of that, and oh, you need to be getting up and doing this and this and this. And so it was reliant on her and me as her caregiver to do that stuff. But pick anything. When I had my prostate out, it was in the hospital, but I was out of the hospital the next day. Gallbladder, almost an outpatient procedure. So pick a lot of procedures, and a lot of it is outpatient. You go home, and if things come up, you're supposed to call the online. And I'm not even going to go into that. But that puts a heavier task on the family caregiver. Medical treatments often drain financial resources. Depending on what kind of Medicare you have, whether it's an Advantage plan or straight Medicare, or even if it's straight Medicare with a supplement plan, the type of supplement plan that you picked, it varies widely as to what's covered, how much is covered. Do you have to get a second opinion? Don't you have to get a second opinion? And now the whole Medicare thing in terms of what they're paying is really up in the air because nobody's getting clear answers about, with the recent passage of the big, beautiful bill, what that's going to be doing to Medicare. There's no clear answers to that. And then family members often live long distances apart. We are no longer a society where you grow up and you live in the region, like maybe an hour, 2 hours away. My family is a classic example. I have 2 daughters. One lives in Phoenix, Arizona, which driving is 12 hours away. And I have another daughter that lives in Laramie, Wyoming, works at the University of Wyoming. She's 4 hours away. So there's long distances. And that makes a huge impact when caregivers, spouses are taking care of each other, and the one spouse, the care partner, and I'm going to try to switch to care partner rather than caregiver, and I'll explain that later. But the care partner spouse is starting to hit the wall, and normally you would turn to adult children, but if they're living 5, 6, 8 hours away, you're not turning to them because the other reason is, I had spouses tell me this all the time, they didn't want to bother their adult kids because they had their own lives to lead. So they would rather buck it up and go through whatever and continue to hit the wall rather than asking their adult children to come and help them figure things out. Autonomy versus safety. This is a huge one. In fact, I was talking about with some of the providers before we got started. Autonomy is, I'm 18 years, I'm older than 18 years old. I can make my own decisions. There's nothing you can do about it. And we all treasure that. That's part of this presentation, is that individualism. We'll go into deeper, but that's the autonomy part versus the safety part. Had too many conversations with adult kids who came from out of town, visited mom and dad. It was very evident that mom or dad needed help, and the adult son or daughter was trying to help, and mom or dad kept pushing back saying, no, I don't want the help. I don't want people in my home. I don't want this, I don't want that. And the adult son or daughter was just beside themselves because oftentimes they would ask me, how can we force that? Because they're not safe. So the other issue, myth in our society is if you're not safe, then somebody, the system, that's going to come and rescue you and keep you safe. No, that's not how we set up our society. Autonomy rules over and against safety. And it has to be really, really, really bad before APS will step in on the safety issue. Okay? Medicine doesn't know when to stop. We've forgotten, or we have lost the dying role in life. Most of us, if you think about your life, we think of it along a straight line. I was born on this date, and I'm getting older and older and older and older, and I'm this here today, and somewhere over here is my death. That sets up a whole different set in our mind of how we deal with living than if you viewed life as a circle. This is the date that I was born, and I'm going around in a circle, and this is where I'm at now, and not too far away, I'm going to go back to pretty much where I started. Okay? But if you think of life as being in a circle, how you deal with things, how you deal with, quote, the dying, the loss of things, is totally different than if you're looking at it this way. Okay? And Native American indigenous people think of life in a circle. And even though they've been scattered and everything like all of us, they still have a very different view of aging and elders and what the old bring to their society, because they view it in a circle. Because they already, viewing it as a circle, they know that there's going to be a time in their life where they have to rely on others in the tribe, in the community, to take care of them. That's just a given. That's built into their DNA and how they view life. We, on the other hand, don't have that built in. What we have built in is, I'm an individual, and I'm going to do it the way I'm going to do it, and I am independent, self-sufficient. I don't need your help. Thank you very much. In fact, there was one time a gentleman came into my office. He was a care partner, and he was talking about things. And I'm not sure why I did this, but I just asked him, I said, so how's the well water doing for you? He said, well water? I don't have well water. I'm on city water. Oh. So how's your solar panels? How's your windmill doing? I don't have solar panels. I don't have a windmill. I'm on electricity from the city. Oh. So how long did it take you to build your house? Well, it took a number of months. So was it really hard building it yourself? No, I had people come in and build it for me. And the reason I was doing that was I was trying to break through, because he thought he was independent. He thought that he didn't have to rely on anybody, even though he was receiving city water, even though he was receiving electricity from the city, even though he relied on people to build his house. He still thought he had done it all himself because of that independent mindset. That's what gets us into trouble. But medicine has lost the dying role in life. I learned this in my hospice work. Physicians, and this has been replicated a couple of times, but it's several studies that have been done related to hospice. Physicians, when asked, would you recommend a treatment to a patient even though you knew it wasn't going to do anything, 49% of the doctors said yes. Why? There's a lot of reasons why. I love doctors, but there are doctors who do not have the emotional depth, ability to call a spade, and to start to go down that path to have that discussion. They're just not emotionally equipped to do that. And we've also, in losing the dying role, there are people who have bought the belief that medicine can do anything. So there's got to be one more test, one more drug, one more thing to do so that I'm not dying. Losing the fact, because when you're focused on treatment, you're not focused on what your body is trying to tell you, that it's dying, and you're losing more and more ability to do stuff, but you're looking at the treatment because you don't want to go any further down that road, so you want to try to stop it, which makes sense, but it also, from my hospice patients, the ones who embraced the reality of what was going on and acknowledged what was happening were the ones who lived well while they were dying. There's an art to that. And there were patients, when I would leave their house, I found myself saying, who helped who? Because I had been provided more life wisdom from my hospice patient who was weeks, months, days away from dying. They taught me about living. And I was the one that was, quote, the professional that had the degree that was supposed to be helping them deal with their dying. They had it all in place. But we've lost the ability to how to cope and deal with that. Because most of us don't. It scares the crap out of us. Sacrificial giving. Sacrificial giving, and the reason I told you I worked in the church is because of what I'm about to say about sacrificial giving. Sacrificial giving is, I grew up in the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod, very conservative in their beliefs and in their theology. And what I remember hearing growing up is it's important to give. Give of your money, give of your time, give of your talents, all of that stuff. And you keep giving, 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 giving. And especially when it comes to money, and I saw this with my parents because we didn't have a lot of money, but when you, quote, ran out of money, the church still expected you to give. It was like the widow's mite in the Bible, you know, about she gave her last mite, be praised. That's the sacrificial giving. When you have nothing to give and you still give, somehow that is better than if you have a lot to give and you only give a certain amount. And this sacrificial giving, I have seen this with a lot of care partners who have a strong church background. This sets them up for exhaustion and failure. It sets them up for hitting the wall because they don't know, because the church, my church, and a lot of other churches that I am aware of, do not teach how to love yourself. Do not teach how to take care of yourself. It's always about taking care of others. It's about that sacrificial giving. And that sets a lot of care partners up for failure and exhaustion and poor boundaries. And then the last part, the individualism, I'm independent, self-sufficient, I don't need your help, thank you very much. That creates a false idea that a person is liberated from dogma, political oppression, social prejudice, and group conformity. I don't have to deal with any of that crap because I'm my own individual. You can't tell me what to do. I have no limits. Laws are a burden because they interfere with my right to do what I want to do, when I want to do it, how I want to do it. David Brooks, the top of the slide says hyper-individualism. That term was coined by David Brooks in his book, The Second Mountain. David Brooks is a well-known well-read, very excellent writer on conservatism. He's a conservative. He would be, if you want to use the term, in the right wing, not the left, he'd be on the right. And in his book, Second Mountain, he coined the term hyper-individualism. Characteristics of hyper-individualism. Persons are valued for what they achieve, not by who you be, not by being a human being. You're valued by what you do. Society is focused on consumerism. The more you consume, the better it is for society. Technology is preferred over intimacy. And we've created technology to replace intimacy. The right wing in hyper-individualism, if you're right-winger, the individual is economically unregulated. So the less regulation you have on the individual, the better it is. For the left-wingers, the individual lifestyles are unregulated. Are these two making sense? Okay, and the only reason I'm asking is we're living through this right now. Okay, taken too far, this hyper-individualism leads to tribalism at the extreme. Tribalism is the dark twin of community. And what he means by that, and again, this is coming from David Brooks' book, tribalism on the dark side is a connection based on mutual hatred. You have to hate other people. You can't accept them for what they are, but you hate them because of a certain nationality or a certain color of their skin or a certain belief. They're not like you, and because they're not like you, you hate them. And it's based on a common foe. It also erects boundaries and creates friends and enemy lists. So which camp are you in? Are you in my camp, which then puts you on the friend side, or are you in some other body, and because of your beliefs, are you in somebody else's camp, which then puts you on the enemy side? There is no in between. It is literally friend or foe. You can't be in the middle ground. And it's a warrior mentality based on the scarcity of resources. We don't have enough. We don't have enough money to pay the industrial material complex. So we got to go to Medicaid and Social Security to take the money to feed that war machine. It's an us versus them mentality. And it's where the ends justify the means. Well, we'll put up the alligator Alcatraz, even though it's going to be dehumanizing and all of that, because the end justifies the means. We've got all those illegals there, so that justifies doing it, even though it makes somebody inhuman. And you hold a worldview of mistrust. Everybody's out to get us. You can't trust anybody. They're just doing it because they need this or this or this. So we've got to be careful, because if we let them in, they're going to use us and make it worse for us, which then ties back into that scarcity of resources. We've got to protect everything that we have. And then it takes the detached person and turns them into a monster. So the person who is in this dark tribalism, there's a shift, and it seems like humanity is slowly fading away because they're believing all of this. In reality, it's not, and this is what this presentation is about in terms of challenges for caregivers and why it's so difficult. We live in a dualistic society. You're either independent or you're dependent, one or the other. So dualistic thinking is independent, dependent, black versus white, day versus night, good versus bad, clear opposites, okay? Not acknowledging this huge area in between, that's the gray area. This is the area of interdependence. This is the area that we literally live most of our lives, is this interdependence. But we don't necessarily acknowledge it consciously because a lot of people believe I'm independent and self-sufficient and I don't need anybody's help. And that's the way I want to stay. So hyper-individualism makes a shared commitment between the caregiver and the care receiver more difficult. You've got two people who are in this individualistic mode. And the one, the daughter or the son, who wants to become the care partner, is more concerned about safety. Mom or dad, the care receiver, is more concerned about autonomy. And those two are going to be butting heads unless somebody gives. And the dance, if one of, so it's a partnership. Think of the caregiver, care receiver like a dance. You got two people dancing together, like the Tennessee Waltz. What if one of them knows the steps and wants to dance the waltz, but the other one says, I'm not dancing? No way. You literally, if you want to continue to dance with me, you're going to be dragging me around because I ain't doing it. And that's oftentimes what happens when the care receiver digs in their heels because they're scared shitless about losing their independence, because they know they're becoming more and more, quote, in their mind, dependent. I don't want to go that way. So they dig in their heels and say, I'm not going to do this. I'm just flat not going to do it. And then you've got daughters and sons who are either, you get angry and upset, or they're in tears and exhausted and don't know where to turn, who to go to get the help that they need, thinking that, well, there's got to be somebody, something that's going to force dad to take the help. And then I always had the bad news, the responsibility saying, no, it doesn't work that way. Well, what do you mean it doesn't work that way? He's making things worse. I know that. And I would sit there and listen and gently try to help them understand the reality of the autonomy versus safety. And it's not a pleasant conversation. Dualistic thinking leads both the caregiver and the care receiver to see and feel dependent and restricted. Dad, you're not doing what I want you to do. I can't take it. I'm not going to take it. I'm gone. You can do what you want. And then daughter, son leaves, and then something happens and they get the phone call from the hospital saying, Dad's in the hospital and this happened, and they come rushing back and they have a huge, huge, huge emotional burden because they couldn't save Dad. Not realizing that Dad was the major reason for why the whole thing happened in the first place. And then Dad, not understanding why son or daughter are being such asses. Sorry for my French, but it's just probably the best way to get the point across. Why are they being so difficult? I didn't raise you to disrespect me. You know better than that. Why are you disrespecting me? Why aren't you listening to me? And it ruins family relationships at a time when family relationships shouldn't be ruined at all. What we desire conflicts with what we know, and what we know conflicts with what we desire. When I read that, this came out of David Brooks' Second Mountain. And when I read that, the light bulb went off. And I got, oh, yes. And then as I read it, I'm going, okay, what does that really mean? So to kind of break it down a little bit, son or daughter is desiring certain things for mom and dad. And so they come in and they're trying to help, and they're running into all kinds of conflicts. And what we know about the conflict is it's there because mom and dad raised them to respect them. Honor your father and your mother. You're not honoring us. So what the kids are desiring in terms of trying to help conflicts with what they know or what the parents know. And then what we know conflicts with what we desire. What we know is dad's not safe. Dad's not able to be at home. And what we desire is to get help in. But dad's not letting that happen. So you have those conflicts going both ways. And it's really messy and confusing. Caregiving is a commitment to interdependence rather than independence or dependence. If there's anything you take away from today's presentation, it's that. When you are a care partner for a family member, it is a commitment to interdependence. You are not committing to be a care partner with them to make them independent again. And you are not committing to being a care partner with them to keep them from being dependent. Because the game plan has changed. In order to do the living well, it has to be interdependent. You have to dance together. For the dance to work and to be beautiful, that requires the interdependence. Yeah, somebody has to lead, but what I remember from my grandmother teaching my brother and I and my sister how to dance is that just because maybe the care partner is the one who's leading for the time being, that doesn't mean the care partner is going to continue to lead throughout the entire time. The care receiver, dad or mom, could then switch and say, I want to take the lead and lead the dance. And then it takes the care partner, the son or the daughter, step back and say, okay, I'll let you lead. It can go back and forth, but that's that interdependence. It's a fluid kind of a movement. Commitment, the word commitment derives from the Latin word mittere, which means to send. You're sending yourself out and giving the other person a claim on you. That's what a commitment is. It is binding to specific obligations. A good commitment has specific, clear obligations to it. It's laid out. So what does it do? A commitment gives us an identity as it connects us to others. Am I the care partner? Am I the care receiver? Am I the spouse? Am I the daughter? Am I the son? It gives us a sense of purpose to meet basic needs. What am I going to be doing? And it gives us a freedom to full capacity, which involves restrict and restraint. The commitment part, from what I've seen throughout my life, but this commitment part is difficult for somebody who's a hyper-individualistic person because of this. They see any kind, remember the commitment was there's specific things to do. That's binding. A hyper-individualistic person doesn't want to be bound by anything. You can't tell me what to do. That's restricting me. It's too confining. I don't want it. What we forget is the subtlety about And those are the two best examples I have. Think about this when you leave and you drive home. Why does driving work in our society? Because you have rules of the road to follow. You have speed limits, you have stop signs, you have stoplights, you drive in this lane, you turn here, all that kind of stuff. All of those are restrictions. All of those are commitment. So when you get your driver's license, you're making a commitment to follow the rules, to be bound by them, because doing that keeps the community safe. Playing an instrument. You have to follow rules in order to play any instrument well. You just do. But what we forget is, in a hyper-individualistic mode, we forget that there's a lot of subtleties where we're following rules, and it's perfectly okay, and it makes things work because we're following those rules, but we forget all of that because I'm the individual, and I'm not going to be bound by anything. So caregiving involves commitment, and it's best done with a community or network of individuals banded together for a common cause that generates wealth by creating more energy than what it consumes. That's what a good community does. Is it generates more wealth than what it needs. Community is derived from the Latin word cum munere. Munere is to give, and cum means among each other. So community means we are banded together in order to give among each other. That's why we're in this community. And if you want to think about it, any organization, the thing that just popped in my mind when I was saying that, I'm thinking of like the entity for Pikes Peak Hospice. It's a community. It's a community. Yes, it's an organization and whatnot, but deep down, we can call it a community because it is a network of individuals banded together for a common cause. So community means to give among each other, and interdependence celebrates giving and relationships. Looking at wealth, because we said it's banded together that generates wealth. Wealth comes from an Old English word weal, which means well-being. In its original context, wealth represents comfort. It represents happiness. It represents satisfaction. It represents vitality. What's missing off of that list? Money. That's not true wealth. It's a commodity by which you measure wealth, but it's not true wealth. Which is why we have certain psychological, emotional issues in our country, because we've turned wealth and we've turned money into a component of measuring wealth, and it's not. Interdependent care is interdependent care is a type of care that generates comfort, happiness, satisfaction, and vitality by giving among each other. Back to hospice. Hospice is interdependent care that generates comfort, happiness, satisfaction, and vitality between the staff and the family. That's the goal. And in reality, that should be the goal for any business, if you want to think about it. So, wealth is the model that creation follows. Quantum entanglement. That's the quantum physics rule that says things affect one another despite distance, space, or time. Quantum entanglement is, and they've done this and they know it works. You could take two tiny particles, this is particle 1, this is particle 2, and they're this close together, and they're influencing each other. They're like quarks, okay? They're the smallest amount of energy. And then you take one of those quarks and you put it on the other side of the Earth. So this one goes to the other side of the Earth. This one stays close by. They stimulate this one. Instantaneously, this one that's stimulated, the quark that's on the other side of the Earth is responding in the same way. That's quantum entanglement. The reason that's important is because all of us have energy that we put off. And just think about whenever you've walked into a room and you go, oh, this is going to be a nice party, because the energy feels good, because everybody in the room is putting off positive energy. Or you walk into the room going, oh, where's the nearest exit? I'm going to get out of here, because the vibes in the room are not good. That's the energy. We all put that off. Okay. Cellular communities, or cells in our body, possess wealth and vitality only after the basic needs of individual cells are met. Here's the interesting thing to think about. Medicine calls cellular hoarding cancer because it creates tumors. And those cells are no longer functioning in a healthy manner. And I'm going to leave the analogy. Take it deeper if you want. I'm going to leave it right there. Interdependent care requires vulnerability to hurt, rejection, and loss. When you enter into a care partnering relationship, whether as the care receiver or the care partner, just know that it's going to require, to do it well, to be vulnerable to hurt, rejection, and loss. The other way to say it, which is an issue for me in my own life, you ain't going to do it perfectly. It's just not going to happen. But in order to do it well, you have to be vulnerable. You have to take those risks. And you have to manage the desire to control. Because interdependence doesn't mean you're laying down, but it doesn't mean you're controlling either. Which is something that we have to begin to reteach ourselves, is how do I do this dance well so that it flows as easily as possible? And we have to trust the unfolding of life events. And I capitalize trust because for me, that's my issue. In my 71 years of life, I'm still learning how to trust. I'm still learning how to not hit the panic button when something bad happens. I'm going, oh shit, everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Because in reality, the trust means I have to go through that in order to get to the place where creation and God and the universe want me to be. And if I'm not willing to go through that, I ain't getting to where I'm supposed to be. But it requires trust to do that. And in a society where the minor mindset is be happy. Look for the, you always have to, you have to find the good, you have to be happy, everything has to be perfect and wonderful and kumbaya and all of that kind of stuff. No, life is messy. And we have to get back to the reality that life is messy and it's going to continue to be messy. But interdependent care requires trust. And that trust means we have to deal with the paradoxes of creation in order to create the wisdom to live that interdependent lifestyle. Paradoxes. This comes from the Tao Te Ching. Yield and overcome. Huh? If I yield, I'm not going to overcome. Paradox. Bend and be straight. Huh? Be empty and be full. The best way to think of paradox, think of the yin and yang symbol. You know, the circle, and you've got the white teardrop and you've got the black teardrop, and they're perfectly nestled in together with each other. That's paradox. That's the yin and yang of life. And we have to be comfortable with those paradoxes in order to have interdependent care. Dependency and being dependent and being independent work in tandem. You need both. Now, what happens is, as you're going through a caregiving experience, the definition of how you're independent has to change. You can't use old definitions in order to make sense of what's currently going on. You can still be independent, but be using a walker or a cane, but you're still getting around. You're still independent. You're not independent like you were when you were 20 and 30, but you're still independent. And you're not totally dependent because you can still get yourself up and do certain things. So as you go through this spectrum in these physical changes, your definition of independence and dependence need to change. And my caregivers who are on my care receivers, when they were on hospice care, the ones who taught me how to live, that's what they did. They were changing their definition of independence and dependence. Independency is about being comfortable with ourselves, the good and the bad, the light and the dark. All of us have skeletons in our closets. All of us have shadows that we don't like about ourselves. In an interdependent relationship, those are going to have to come out, and you're going to have to be comfortable with it. It's like, because without the, think about, and it's not exact, today's not a good example, but on a clear day, when the sun is out, and you're outside and you're walking, so the sun's illuminating everything. And depending on the time of day, what do you see in the light? You see your shadow. It's there with you. So what are you going to do about it? How comfortable are you going to be with it? Because the reality, like in nature, you can't get rid of the shadow unless it's dark. And then you've got another problem, because then you need light. For the community to grow, we need to acknowledge our vulnerabilities to better understand the vulnerabilities of others. In order for me to understand what my daughter is trying to do to help me, I have to understand my vulnerabilities. I have to wrestle with my fears, my doubts, my concerns. I need to struggle those, and I need to make those aware. And my daughter, the same thing. She's got vulnerabilities too. And it may be around death and dying. I'm not sure I can do this and walk this path with you, Dad, because I'm afraid of where it's going, which means you're going to be dead. And that's a vulnerability. But that vulnerability also means she's probably dealing with things, regrets, things that didn't go well, things that she wished she could go back and redo. Those are all the vulnerabilities. And both parties need to acknowledge their vulnerabilities and need to work with those. So, as human beings, and this comes from Jane Barton, who's a dear friend of mine, and it comes from her book, Caregiving for the Genius. As human beings, we are born into community, we play in community, we learn in community, we live in community, We worship in community, so why not care in community? That's the challenge to the hyper-individualism, and I'm the independent, self-sufficient, I don't need your help, thank you very much. To do it well, you have lived your life in community, whether or not you want to acknowledge it. So this care needs to occur in community as well. Using, again, nature and creation. Geese flying information, and this comes from Jane's book as well. The lead is shared with others' information. So if you watch geese as they fly, you may be able to, at a certain time, the lead drops out and falls back, and another geese takes the point. Okay? So they share in the leadership. Geese fly 71% farther in formation due to uplift. That's why they fly information, because it gives them uplift. If you're a person in NASCAR, it's because of drafting. Drafting and uplift are the same thing. Geese honk to encourage and motivate. They are the noisiest things that fly over. Why are they so noisy? Because they're encouraging each other with their honking. And geese are committed to the group. If something happens to one of the geese and they have to fall out, one other goose will fall out with them and stay with them until they either recover, they stabilize, or they die. So using that in terms of care partnering, it's a shared leadership. Primary caregivers need not be on point all of the time. The daughter, the son, the spouse who is the point person, they don't need to be on point all of the time. They need a community, and they need others that they can trust that will come in and take point over from them so they can get a break. Remember, 10 years if you've got dementia, 4.5 years if nothing else. There are alternative plans of care in place for unexpected events. That's the hard part, because you need somebody that has gone through that before to help you think about, well, this might come up, this might come up, this might come up. And you're not going to be getting that from the doctor necessarily. Or maybe from the nurse practitioner if they're good and they have a lot of work experience and life experience. But you need people with practical experience who would say, you might want to be thinking about this or this or this. Doesn't mean it's going to be happening, but you need to be aware of what you're going to be doing if it happens. And it utilizes the strengths and abilities of everybody involved. Uplift, having a support team. You're better able to manage the emotional, physical demands of long-term caregiving when you have a team. I went through this recently with Nita's total knee replacement, and we were basically housebound, and it was like 7 or 8 days after the surgery, and I said, we got to get out of the house. This is smothering both of us. She said, yeah. So we got out of the house and went for a drive. We drove up the pass and drove around up in Teller County and out into the woods. But think about long-term caregiving. How are you going to handle that confinement? That emotional, physical confinement that all of the parties are feeling. How do you break that? How do you do that? It takes a team in order to do it well. Happiness, comfort, satisfaction, and vitality are more likely to be attained and experienced by all if you have a team. Desires, goals, and dreams are more easily within reach. Remember, geese fly 71% farther because of the uplift, because they have a team. You're able to get down to, what's your goal? I want to stay in this house until I die. Well, in order to do that, you have to have a good team who's going to be there that you can rely on at different times to be able to do that for you. You're not going to be able to do it if you just rely on your care partner all the time. It ain't going to happen. And then you must be intentional about forming the teams. This isn't, oh, I'll get to it next week. Well, the emergency comes up before next week. And then you find yourself deeper in the rabbit hole. That's not good either. Honking, making noise. Encouragement is experienced by the community. You need a team that's going to be your cheerleaders and encourage everybody on the team. And you need to surround yourself with people who will encourage you when you need it the most. Jim Rohn said this one time, and it's really true. You are the average, the person you are as a human being, you are the average of the 6 people you spend the most time with. So think about that later today. Who are the 6 people I spend the most time with? Are they people that are encouraging? Are they people that are uplifting? Are they people who are moaning and complaining and bitching and all of that? Because that's going to have a direct impact on your psychological well-being, and especially if you are in a care partner situation. You need people around you who are going to encourage you and understand you and support you and be there to help. And the honking provides a feeling of unity and shared experience. Yeah, we're in this together. We can do this. Completing the flight, the recovery, stabilization, or death. Committing to care support is a serious obligation. Know what you're getting into. It's going to require a lot more from you than what you expect. But it's easier when others are with us no matter what happens. Because you got other people who, when you get down as part of the care team, you've got your support by the other members on the team as well. And that's important because the support of the team just doesn't go to the care partner or the care receiver. The support of the team goes to everybody on the team. And then it provides that sense of we will not be alone. I'm not alone in doing this. So, in your interdependent care plan, aspects needing attention in the medical side, and this is just hitting the very bare bones. Medical, does the team understand the prognosis, the treatment expectations, and the disease progression? Do they really understand that, or is somebody still trying to feed everybody on the team Kool-Aid? Meaning, oh, it's not that bad, they're going to get better. Or we're waiting on this treatment to make it better. You need to be in touch with reality. And what I learned in my hospice work, and this is a myth that we still hold today, is if you start thinking about death and dying, most people say, I don't want to do that because I'm inviting death to come into the door, which means it's going to happen. So I want to keep death as far away as possible. That's a bunch of bull. Because what I've learned is you need to look the bugger straight in the eyes. And when you're ready, when it's ready, it'll happen. But just because you're thinking about it doesn't mean it's going to happen. You do not have that power. I'll tell you right now, as a human being, you do not have that power to think it and make it happen when it comes to dying. Is there coordination between different medical persons and persons on the care team? You got to make sure that everybody's in the same boat. I had situations when I was doing hospice work where family members were telling me one thing and they were telling the nurse something else. And they were telling neighbors something else. And they were telling the friend who came over something else. There were 5 different stories going on about the same thing. And everybody fell into the trap of, oh my God. And it was upsetting everybody's, the boats all of us were in were getting turned over. And we were providing poor care. So your team has to communicate well with each other. They just have to. On the legal, are powers of attorney in place? What do they say? Everybody on the team needs to know what's in the powers of attorney and what's being said, because you never know what's going to happen. It may be the neighbor that's over providing some respite, and that's when the thing happens, and there's a DNR, but the neighbor doesn't know about the DNR, and the neighbor doesn't know what to do, and so 911 is called, and then all of a sudden the person is going to the hospital and they don't want to go to the hospital. So power's in place, and what do they say? Who are the agents? And then are the agents a part of the care team? And I had situations in hospice, believe it or not, where the care team involved a whole lot of people, but it didn't involve the agents for the powers of attorney. Made it really interesting when things started to happen. Finances. How much money does the care team have to spend on needed resources and needs? Is there a lot of money? Is there a little bit of money? Because that's going to determine, are we able to hire somebody to come in and do some of this? Are we able to pay for respite? Where are we going to get the respite? Or do we have to rely on a public program to provide the respite? And so knowing the money situation really has a huge impact on where are you going to go in the community to get the resources that you need based on what you have available to pay. And what is the team and the care receiver willing to do, and at what point? How and whom will be able to access the money when needed? Is it the financial power of attorney? Is it the care receiver? Who holds the strings to the purses to be able to get the care involved? And then going back to, I want to stay at home. We understand that. But what if this happens? Is there money? Is there availability to find a care facility? What kind of care facility? Is it a dementia care? Is it assisted living? Is it a nursing facility? Is it independent care? What are the advantages and disadvantages to all of that? And money comes into play with all of that. Housing. I just touched on that. Where will the care by the team be provided? Will or can other options be considered? And then emotional. How will the team provide needed respite? Are we going to do it ourselves? Are we going to rely on a home care agency to come in to provide the respite? Are we going to rely on hospice to come in and provide the respite? How are we going to get the respite taken care of? And where will the respite be taken care of? And then what about education, support groups, and counseling? Where can the care team go to learn more about the challenges of caregiving? Because this isn't what I signed up for. Am I going crazy? Am I doing something wrong? Education will help provide that. Education, I think about, and I know that the Caregiver Support Center is still doing this. There's a course called Powerful Tools for Caregiving, which is an excellent course that teaches care partners how to properly communicate in difficult situations. It's a wonderful, wonderful course. And Lucy's sitting right over here. At the end, you can get more information from her. And then support groups, and then counseling. So the process is identify, you need to identify the interdependent care team members. Age is not a factor. You can have grandkids involved. You can have 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, grandkids involved. They are wonderful in providing unique kind of care that only they can provide. What do you need help with? When do you need the help, and how frequently do you need it? Get commitments on what team members can help and with what they can help with and how they can help. And then expect to add and delete needs as they change. Because the needs are going to be constantly changing. What makes sense now today is not going to make sense 6 months later when the care receiver has declined even more and their physical debility has increased up to here. You're going to have to keep evolving and changing the care plan. But that's just part of the progression of what's going on. And then identify the person to organize the community and the network. And my suggestion is the person who organizes the community and the network doesn't have to be, probably should not be the main care partner. So the organizer of the community and who sits on the community and helps it mold and work together shouldn't necessarily be the wife or the adult son or the adult daughter. They've got enough stuff to do. They need somebody else who is close enough to them to walk beside them to take that huge thing off of their plate. And then identify how the community will be informed of needs and changes. Critical, critical, critical. And it's best to use local resources and technology to streamline organizational aspects, which leads me to where to go. So the Family Caregiver Support Center at the Area Agency on Aging, they can assist with the beginnings of the formulation of a creation plan. They can help. Remember those ambiguous questions? They ask those questions. They can ask those questions if that's what the care partner needs at that time. They have a respite voucher program. They can provide some of the education, powerful tools for caregivers. They have a pampering day that they do annually. Wonderful break from the caregiving for caregivers. Local disease organizations are a font of resources. So if the person has cardiomyopathy or congestive heart failure, you might want to be contacting the Heart Association to get input about resources that they may have available. Or if they got cancer, contact the American Cancer Association. They have resources available as well. The UCCS Aging Center, wonderful place for counseling support groups to go to get that emotional support. The Yellow Book and the Blue Book, both of them have wonderful lists of resources in the community that caregivers can tap into. CarePatrol is a wonderful resource as well, and they're handling through with the Area Agency on Aging the caregiver calendar. I think that's what they call it, right? Yeah. Which has upcoming information that would be very helpful for family caregivers to tap into. And then I put in Stephen Ministers. There are a lot of congregations in our community who have what are called Stephen Ministers. They go through an 80 hours of training to be skilled listeners. And whether it's Baptist, Methodist, Presbyterian, Lutheran, whatnot, there are a number of those churches who have Stephen Ministers. So if you're a member of a church, be checking in and asking about, do you have Stephen Ministers? And I should have put in parentheses over here, just church in general. You need to be checking in with your churches because they may have resources that are available for you to tap into that would be helpful to be a part of the care team. In terms of technology, lots of helping hands. That's best for an organizational calendar. That's wonderful. It's a free website. You set up a calendar, and on the calendar, you put down all of the tasks that the interdependent care team is going to be doing. You put that on the calendar with the person's name. If there's a task that's not there, because once you set up the calendar, you send it out to the care team members and other people who didn't commit but still might be interested, and they can look and say, oh, I see that you need help with that, and they can contact the member of the care team who put that together and say, I'm willing to help with this on that day. It's a very efficient, effective way to communicate needs of the care team. Caring Bridge started out in hospitals, so when family members went into the hospital, what that did is, what Caring Bridge was you could set up a website so that when dad went into the hospital and friends and neighbors were calling the daughter to say, how's dad, how's dad, how's dad? And so she was taking 20 or 30 different phone calls and giving the same information. If you set up Caring Bridge, you set up that website, you just put in notes about how things are going, what things are happening, and anybody who's interested can contact and get the information and go and be a part of the information that's distributed through the Caring Bridge. And it's expanded beyond the hospital, which is a major change that they've done over the last number of years. AARP has a Caregiver Resource Center, which has a treasure chest of resources and support. And then a great tool for involving anybody long distance, Teams, Zoom, and FaceTime. And then there's probably others that are there that but that's technology that you can use to help the interdependent care team function. So ways to support a caregiver. I'll just go through these real quick. Pay a bill. Find out if there's something outstanding and just pay a bill for them. Give an hour of your time to do something, whether it's raking the yard or pulling the weeds in the garden or whatever it may be. And don't think that, well, that's just too small of a task. I guarantee you, when the care team is in the depths of it and somebody comes in and says, I'd be willing to do this, they will just jump at that and say, wonderful. Listen. Let the care partner, let the care receiver vent. You don't try to solve the problem. You don't try to fix them. You listen to them. Run errands. Maintain a friendship. The thing that I saw in hospice care and that I saw when I was doing the Family Caregiver Support Center is the circle of friends. The friends who, when everything started, they would come over, and then 6 months later, so you'd have like maybe 5 or 6 friends that came over on a regular basis when everything started. 6 months later, you may be down to 2 people. And then another 6 months later, maybe down to nobody, or the one diehard. And I couldn't figure out what happened. One of the reasons that happens is if they're coming over to spend time to provide emotional support to the care partner, and the care receiver is in the bedroom and they're in pain and they're screaming, or they're angry because of the emotions and everything, and they're screaming and yelling, the friend who came over to spend time with the care partner, they're not comfortable with that. And they're not going to expose themselves to that on a continual basis, because it feels like they're keeping their care partner from something because they're trying to talk and they're saying, well, shouldn't you be taking care of that? Shouldn't you be taking care of that? And the care partner has a difficult time explaining why they don't want to take care of it, because it's been going on for the last 6-7 hours and it's not going to stop if I walk in there, kind of a thing. And so there's this huge discomfort. And so the way friends and neighbors who would come over and visit on a regular basis, the way they deal with that discomfort, they stop coming. So it's important to maintain the friendship that you have and find unique ways to maintain the friendship. Provide a break. When you come over, just say to the friend, do whatever you need. If they need to be on their pain meds before you leave, make sure that they're on their pain meds. But I'll stay here. I want you to get out. Go. Do something. I don't care if you walk around the block, but get out. Send notes or cards of support. Please, please, please do not underestimate that. And the reason I say that is because when I was a DCE, part of my ministry was something that only the parents really saw, and a lot of other people in the congregation didn't see it. But I would make it a point to send a note to the kids that were in high school and junior high on a regular basis. And I knew enough about them to make the notes really, really personal. And the feedback I got from the parents who saw the notes, I'll say it this way. There were days where it was a pain in the ass to take the time to set aside the space and get myself in the right frame of mind to write those personal notes, because I had other things just showering down on me. You got to get this done, you got to do this and this and this. But when I get the feedback from the parents saying how much they saw it affected their son or daughter, that gave me the emotional strength to continue to set aside the time to do that. So please, sending notes and cards of support. And I will admit this, I'm a boomer, I'm from the generation. So if I got a text and I got a card, for me, the card would have a greater emotional impact on me than the text. because for me, the card is more personal because I put text in the impersonal category. Organize getaway opportunities. Bring over a gift basket. What do you know that the care partner really likes? You know, bring over some kind of a gift basket for them. Bring over their favorite foods. The thing about, so most churches will organize a food train. So something happens to a member of the church and the spouse is taken care of, and so they set it up, and so different members are bringing over. And the problem with the food train is it's all stacked up on top. So one person brings over this casserole, next night another person brings over another casserole, third night somebody brings over a third, and you get 4 or 5 casseroles, and the 4 to 5 casseroles feed 5 or 6 people. So there's a lot of wasted food when you do that. So if you're going to organize, bringing food over, space it out, please. You know, it doesn't have to be every night. It can be one night and then 4 nights later, somebody else brings something over. 4 nights later, somebody else brings something over. That's more beneficial than stacking it all up. And then organize getaway opportunities. Anything else that you can think of should go on this list. It doesn't have to be big, but it's a way to support their team. So to conclude, Albert Einstein, strive not to be a success, but a value. Your involvement and support, whether you are a part of an interdependent care team, or whether you're the neighbor that's standing on the outside looking in and you want to continue to provide that support, keep this in mind. What you're doing is not about success. It's not to make it successful. The best is that what you're doing has value. And then from David Brooks, suffering shatters the illusion of self-sufficiency, which is an illusion that must be shattered if any interdependent life is going to begin. That, for me, is, I think, when people ask, why does God let good things happen? Well, one, God doesn't let that. That's a whole nother theological issue. But the other is, illusions have to be shattered in order for life to begin. And I had some hospice patients who really didn't have that illusion shattered until 1 or 2 days before their death. Sad to say, but it happens. But sometimes life-threatening diagnoses are for the purpose of shattering self-sufficiency, to allow a bigger, deeper richness to come into the person's life. Whether they choose that or not is up to them. But that's the opportunity for that to occur. And then Martin Luther King, an individual has not started living until he or she can rise above the narrow confines of their individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity. And with that, I'm done. Thank you.